What's up, YouTubers? Johnny DIY here. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace or install a water heater. Today's example is going to be a gas water heater, but it's going to be the same if it's an electric water heater. So if you guys are new to my channel, please do me a favor, click the subscribe and notification bell so you can get all my new videos. Alright, let's get to this one. Okay, so maybe your water heater just stopped working, but a lot of times what happens is the bottom of these things rust out and you'll start to notice a leak. This one has a little pan and it started to leak out the drain. So that's how we know this one's bad. The first thing you're going to want to do is turn off the water heater on the control. So we'll just twist this knob to the off setting where it lines up right here. You should be able to check the instructions on your water heater if yours is a little different. And then since this is a gas water heater, we'll follow our gas line right over here to our gas valve, and we're going to switch this to the off position. So that's horizontal, the valve knob, to the pipe. That means it's going to be off. If it was like this, that means it's on. If you have an electric water heater, you're going to want to go ahead and unplug that. Okay, so then we'll come on up to the top of our water heater and we're going to go ahead and shut off the cold water supply line that's coming in. This is just a ball valve, but maybe you have a gate valve where you just need to twist it and twist that all the way shut. Now we're going to open the hot water faucet that's closest to our water heater. That's just going to let air in the system for when we drain the water tank. Okay, so now we're going to take a regular garden hose and you're going to come down to the bottom of the tank, and this is your drain valve right here. You're going to hook up the garden hose right to the end of that. And make sure you have the garden hose running downhill, and it's going to be hot water, so be careful. You don't want to run it to your plants or anything. Then you're going to take a flathead screwdriver and we're just going to give it a turn to the left slowly to open it up. Just about a turn. It should be good. Then we'll come up here to the temperature and control valve. This is the valve that will open if the tank builds too much pressure or too high of a temperature. It's a safety feature, so it'll drain. This one's going to an outside pipe that drains outside, but maybe yours just drains straight down to the floor or into the pan. But we'll open this so that we can get some more air into the system. So you just was draining really slow. Sometimes these valves can get corroded shut almost over the years. Pretty much plugged up, so I'm gonna go ahead and close it off. Careful, you may need gloves if the water's really hot. It's coming out a little more now, but get a piece of wire or coat hanger. We're gonna open it up, see if we can't fish it in there. Now it's coming out better. There we go. Okay, now it's finally draining pretty well. We're just gonna let this drain all the way so that we'll be able to lift that tank. It's very heavy with all the water. Okay, while that finishes draining, we're gonna go ahead and disconnect this gas line. This flare fitting right here. So just take your adjustable wrench and we're gonna loosen this up. You are going to want to pick up a new one of these flex gas lines every time you replace your water heater. These are just a one-time use per appliance. I'll make sure I put links down in the description to all the tools and supplies that we're going to be using today for you guys. So go ahead and check those out. Then we're going to go ahead and disconnect these water supply flex lines right here. These are flexible in case there's any shifting or like an earthquake, that these don't bust. You're going to want to replace these ones with new ones as well when you're changing out the water heater. These ones were actually just replaced with some plumbing, so I'm going to leave these. We just go ahead and loosen it to the left. We'll just bend that out of the way. And then you're going to want to disconnect it from this side as well. But like I said, these ones are fairly new, just this year. So I'm going to go ahead and leave them. Alright, so now I'll disconnect this flue. Just going to go ahead and mark it so I get it back together easier. Now we can go ahead and take those screws out to get this flue out of the way. Now it's important when you get your new water heater, try and get a one that's Very similar to the old one. That'll make things a lot easier when reinstalling. If you can, you'd be better off going to a local plumbing supply store. Bring your old model number to them and they should be able to get you the one that'll be closest. They come in different diameters and heights. The height will affect your flue, and it's also going to affect the placement of your temperature and pressure valve. Some of them are up here on the top, but a lot of them nowadays are on the sides. So if you're plumbed for either of those, just get one that matches. It'll make things easier. There we go. Okay, then we're going to undo these straps right here, top and bottom. These are earthquake straps. These will prevent any sort of accident from the water heater tipping over in the event of earthquake or any sort of settling or anything like that. You wouldn't want this thing full of hot water to fall. Go ahead and mark them where they are. If you get in the same tank, then you'll be able to put it back together a lot easier. You'll know the notches that these little things go into. Now the way my temperature and control valve is set up, it's direct plumbed outside and it's all soldered together. So I'm going to try and unsweat this joint right here. If it doesn't work, I can always cut it and just redo it. But if yours is running down, that's fine. You're going to want to make sure that when yours runs down that it stops about 6 inches above the floor or 6 inches above your drain pan. You want that 6-inch air gap to make sure it doesn't splash back up. Just got some propane, little torch. So that solder starts to bubble and loosen up. Grab our pliers. Here we go. There we go. Now we can go ahead and take this off, this part of the pipe. There we go. Now we can reuse this.
Well, it's not something.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
The light just went out, right?
Yeah.
I didn't mean it to. Installed. Now we're going to go ahead and connect the flex water lines back to the top. Obviously make sure that you don't get these two mixed up. It says right here hot and cold. Now you shouldn't have to put any tape on these or thread sealant ideally, but I like to use pipe dope or pipe thread sealant. And you just put it on the male portion of the threads right here. And this is just gonna give you a little backup insurance because sometimes I have had these leak before. Go and reconnect it. And when you tighten it, kind of pull up to straighten this part out while you tighten it. That's so that this little plastic sleeve gets a good seal. And you want to tighten this pretty tight, but once we test it, we can always retighten this if it's leaking a little bit. Okay, then you're going to want to take the new temperature and pressure valve, and I went ahead and put some of that pipe thread sealant on that as well. You could use tape on that or both even. If you're going to use both, do the tape first and then rub the pipe thread sealant. And we're We're gonna go ahead and tighten this good and tight. And then this needs to line up with your runoff hose, your discharge hose. I'm gonna put that discharge line, screw that onto the valve. I actually should have did this before I put those water lines on. I actually had to disconnect those real quick because I kind of got to get it to line up with this pipe right there to meet that 90. Tighten this down good and tight. That gets thread sealant too. Now I got to put that 90 back on here, and you're going to want to make sure that you clean all the surfaces really well, especially since I'm reusing this. Sand off all the old solder as much as you can. Get it smooth and clean. You can use sandpaper like 120 grit, emery cloth. Then we're gonna put flux on the pipes as well as the fitting. You just brush this on all the way around it. So I put the flux on the inside of the 90 too. That way when we fit it in, now I can kind of move the water heater to get it to line up with this. Alright, now we're going to do the same thing with our propane torch. We're going to heat the fitting up. We've got our lead-free solder. Touch the solder to the joint. If you can, hit it on the back side of where the heat is and it'll draw it in. There it goes. So basically you want to put it on the back side of wherever you're applying the heat, and it'll draw that solder to the heat. And then once you get it hot enough, you can take the flame off and just kind of run the solder along the joint and it'll suck it in. Then after it's cooled down some, we're going to go ahead and wipe off any of that burnt flux or anything. It's good to get off that because it can cause corrosion. Go ahead and check to make sure you got it solder all the way around it. Looks good. A little heavy on the solder, but that's fine. Okay, now I need to reconnect this flue pipe. Now if your water heater is taller, you're gonna wanna make sure that you have enough rise or slope in this pipe. We'll tighten down this good and tight. Yeah, so what I was saying is, if your water heater ends up being taller, you're gonna have to adjust your flue, but you just wanna make sure that you have 1/4 of an inch per foot length of slope. That's to make sure this drafts well through your roof and you don't get any sort of backdraft. You don't want that because that'll lead to carbon monoxide. Now we're gonna go ahead and reconnect those earthquake straps. Now when you tighten this, you're not gonna want to tighten this a lot, super tight, since we've got our connections up there already made. If you're to tighten this too much, it's gonna pull the whole water heater and it's gonna mess up our solder joints and our water lines. It'll make them askew and that'll lead to leaking. So you can go ahead and do this first before you do those, or when you put them back on. Just make them so they hug the water heater but don't pull it in. A washer goes between the nut and the bracket right here. Now we gotta put that new gas line I was showing you. This end right here, see how it's flared? That end always goes into the end of the hose. This end right here, it's not, that's gonna go into the side of our water heater control right here. We gotta put some of that thread sealant. Don't need any thread sealant or tape on the flare. The flare does the sealing. You could use tape too, but make sure that it's the gas tape. That's going to be different than the stuff we use for water. I'll make sure I put it down in the description for you guys if you want to check that out, the differences. So this just basically fills in all those threads. So it prevents leakage. And we're gonna thread it in. And then we're gonna tighten this down. It needs to be pretty tight, but we're gonna be checking these gas joints after, so we can always tighten it more. Make sure this flared brass end of our valve is nice and clean. And we're gonna connect it to that. And we can tighten this down. It doesn't have to be super tight because of that flare. It's gonna really squeeze it. And same thing to this one. Making sure that when we tighten it, it doesn't kink our line or put a bunch of pressure on it. There we go. Now we're gonna wanna open the gas valve back up. So that's gonna be parallel to the way the gas is running. That means it's open. Now I've got this cool little gas sniffer you can turn on, and we're gonna run it around the fitting to make sure it doesn't smell anything. Run it around the valve, both sides of the fitting. We're gonna run it around this side too, on all of the connections. So back, middle, and this will beep if there's any gas detected. Looks good. I'll go ahead and put a link in the description for this cool tool. And then you're also going to want to do some of this soapy water. This is your tried and true method for any sort of gas work. Went ahead and put some laundry soap in it. If this bubbles up at all, we'll know. Make sure it's sudsy. No bubbles coming out. It looks good. See some big bubbles popping if there was any gas leaks. And we'll go ahead and make sure our hot water side is open on the tap. Then we'll come up top and we're going to open our cold supply line slowly. And we can start to check our connections, at least this side right here. Make sure that these aren't leaking or weeping. Okay, I've got that fully open now. Now this whole tank is going to fill up. While that's filling, we're going to continue to check this cold supply line right here. Once it gets filled up, we get the water heater going. We start using this, we can check this line. Let this run till it's full. You'll know it's full when it stops running. You can feel the pipe and feel the water stop. Okay, I just heard the water start to come in from our hot water. Maybe it went through our valves in the sink. Yeah, so now it's coming out the sink. We're just gonna let that run. It'll get all the air out. Now we can check the hot water line to make sure that's not leaking. Just cold water's going through it now because we don't have the water heater on yet, but everything looks dry. If it's weeping or leaking, just go ahead and give it a quarter turn first to see if that stops the leak. Usually it leaks right around here. If it doesn't help it, what you're gonna have to do is shut the water back off and disconnect it altogether. And like I showed you guys early, you kind of got to get these sometimes perfectly just right, or they end up leaking right there. Come down to the control panel and we're gonna light the pilot light. So what we need to do is we need to twist the knob until it lines up with pilot. Then you're gonna hold down on the knob, press it in, while you hit this button right here that says ignite. And you're just gonna keep pressing the ignite button until the status light comes on. Oh, there we go. I think I got a status light right here. There we go. See, it's gonna blink green once it's got that pilot light lit. I need to turn this to our setting now. I'm gonna turn it to this one right here, hot. Start out there. There goes the pilot, and I can hear it lighting up. Okay, now we know the gas is running, so we're gonna go ahead and test it again with our sniffer. We can also do our bubbles too. And when you're looking for bubbles, make sure you look all the way around the fitting because they could be leaking from underneath as well. Looks good still. Good. The water heater was running for about 30 minutes or so, and I could hear it burning and heating up the water. Go ahead and check these fittings one last time, make sure they're not weeping or anything. And the final test, obviously, we're gonna go ahead and check our hot water. Make sure we're running nice and hot. You can also adjust that knob to make it hotter. Just go ahead and turn it more this way. Last thing to do is just to date when we put it in. Alright guys, awesome. It was a success. So hopefully you found something in this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave those down below and I'll get back to you. If you guys are new to the channel, please subscribe and click the notification bell so you can get my new videos. Thanks for watching Johnny DIY. Keep on doing it yourself, guys. Take care.